Good morning, and half a day. The committee of the whole is called back to order. And if I'm correct, I think we completed page 34, chapter 3, part 1. All right? And we closed that yesterday. This morning we're starting with chapter 3, part 2, Department of Public Health. Okay, we're on chapter 3, part 2, and the only amendment I see here is in page 40, introduced by, does anyone like to speak on the first page, first section? We're in section 1, and then we'll proceed on because the amendment to be addressed is on page 40. And so that no one will complain that they didn't get a shot at talking. We're on page 35. Anyone would like to speak on page 35? Madam Speaker, you want to speak on that? Any comments for page 35?
Well, yes, Mr. Chair, and I just wanted to confirm. So public health, in contrast to all the other public health agencies who got decreases, has seen an increase of $39 million, and the bulk of this seems to be from special funds. And wait, $39.6 million increase to public health from FY24. Wait, I take it back. That's the governor requested a $39 million, and then you reduced her request by $76,000. So it's still about at least a $38 million increase. Is that right? Like, that's huge. And is this because they got more grants? Because the general fund amount is not that much different. It's 58 to 60. It actually was 65 before, and it's now gone down to 58 million general fund. So you decrease the general fund. You increase the HPLO revolving fund. Vital statistics is almost the same, and but the federal, it's the federal matching grants and aid that has a huge difference. Is this Medicaid?
It was federal increase. That's what it was.
Pardon?
Federal. The way I'm looking at the spreadsheet,
yeah,
it's more
federal. Federal matching grants and aid. That's about like $39 million.
That's correct.
Yeah. Why is that?
I'm going to safely assume that has to do with the request for federal grants and their matching. But we're looking at the spreadsheet right now to confirm that. Madam Speaker, Medicaid increased by $37 million as we're looking at the spreadsheet.
Yeah, so it went from 107 to 143. So it looks like the bulk of it is Medicaid, and that's what I wanted to confirm. Medicaid, right? So we are going to get more federal Medicaid dollars, right?
That's correct, by
Okay,
37 million.
So that's a very good. Of course, that's excellent. I just want to confirm that, Mr. Chair, that's why the increase. But the general fund decreased from 65 to 58. I haven't heard back from public health regarding their budget, this revised budget by OFB, but it's a decrease from the general fund. Do you not believe that's going to impact their operations?
I'm going to assume it's not, and because of the increase in the Medicaid. I mean, the other areas have increased. 37 million is a lot of money.
I know, but that's all Medicaid, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, all their other services, that's what I'm just worried about, if the decrease in the general fund. For example, Section 4 is,
Are you done with section 1 so I can go to each section? So
okay, yes, sure.
nobody else will come.
Well, I'm
complain.
concerned about this decrease in general fund. It went from 65 last year million to 58 million this year. So that's
That's
significant.
correct.
Yes. That's public health. And then, okay,
Okay, anyone like to speak on section 1? If not, that's closed. We're now in section 2.
yes, so
Madam Speaker?
Section 2 also was a decrease from 5 million point 6 last year to 3.9 million this year. This is the MIP. So this is everybody who can't be covered by Medicaid. This is for, cancer screening, all of those other non-covered services as well. And it's decreased by $2 million. That's MIP.
So your question is, what was that, ma'am?
Why a $2 million decrease in MIP?
You're just asking specifically on Medicare Indigent Program, MIP, correct?
Yeah.
Why the $2 million?
So we went down 7 million in the general fund overall for public health. About 2 of that is decrease in MIP general fund appropriation. Yeah, MIP, I feel like, I'm not sure there's a decrease in need for MIP.
Ma'am, you're focusing specifically in section 2, not section 3, correct?
That's correct. Section 2.
Section 2, MIP, from the 3 million right now, why the reduction by 2 million, correct?
Correct.
I know for a fact that OEB was working with public health and asking them if they have any impact, and they probably didn't respond or said that they had no problem with it. And my understanding is that public health is moving a lot of folks from MIP to Medicaid, moving to the program that's got more money. And because they're eligible for it.
Yeah, well, of course, they've tried to increase Medicaid, so we've also increased our matching Medicaid. But I just wanted to hear it from somebody that we don't need this money in MIP, because my understanding is Medicaid doesn't cover everything. And even with private insurance or government insurance, there's still things that are not covered. And when these some of these become eligible for MIP, or those who for some reason or another are not eligible for Medicaid. But if it's decreased according to public health's request, I'm not familiar with that.
Yes, I understand. Is there anything else on section 2 or 3?
No.
Nothing else? Anyone like to speak on section 2 or 3? None. Section 2 or 3 is closed. We're now on page 37, section 4, 5, and 6. Madam Speaker, you wanted to speak on that area too, or no?
Yeah, well, 4 and 5, these are, it's a mix of general fund and then the federal matching. And
That's correct.
so it looks like, I mean, I'm sure this is, you know, there's a basis for this, but the federal matching part increases, but our general fund, local matching requirement is decreasing. And so I just want to make sure that's correct again, that we're gonna get more federal funds for less match. So we went from 3.8 to 1.8 in the general fund matching, but we're going up to 10 million versus 8 million in the federal matching, which is great if that's the case. That's great. The same thing looks like happened on the senior citizens. General fund went down, but actually the federal match went down by 100,000 also. That's minor. It's just a children's chip. I just wanted to point that out. It looks like, hopefully, it's great. We're getting more federal matching grants. That's good work on public health side. But our general fund match went down, so I hope that's correct. That's all I wanted to say, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Madam Speaker, and that's something we've been pushing on our office side, is convincing all the agency to go after all your grants. There's grants out there. The more you get, the less we have to fund you by general fund. Now that will close then, page 37, we're now on page 38, section 7 and 8 and 9. Anyone would like to speak on 7, 8, or 9? Yes, ma'am. Senator Tello?
Mr. Chair, did you go to the program authorization for senior citizen? You touched on section 4, but I didn't hear you. Maybe I didn't hear you say section 5 and 6 is open for discussion, or?
Oh, no, it was all open. I opened everything on that page 37. 4,
Oh, so
5,
you're going
and
per
6.
page and not per section?
No, I went by section and
Okay,
page.
and page, okay.
And that's why I had, the speaker spoke on the issue of page 37, section 4, 5, and 6.
Okay.
And she did comment to all of this, and that federal matching is coming in. More federal money is coming in. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, in section 5 then, Mr. Chair, where it says program authorization for Division of Senior Citizens, didn't public health request for additional funding, or was that the same explanation as it's increasing in the federal matching grant, to pull more federal funds that way and then lower down in the general fund? Because can we ask the OFB, did they request for additional funding for the senior division?
Okay, you wanted to know from OB if they asked?
Yes.
Because my understanding is as they were trying to work the budget, they were identifying where the increase were at and where the decrease were at, and they had an understanding of it, and due to the federal matching funds. So I'm going to assume that's how they were working it, because they, remember when they look at the budget, they look at the overall picture, and then they identify, okay, what can cover what? And they walked away with it and said, okay, they can live with it for now.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, just
all right.
wanted to verify that.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, and that completes now page 37, section 4, 5, and 6. We're now on page 38, 7, 8, and 9, section 7, 8, and 9. Anyone would like to comment on section 7, 8, and 9? I see no hands. Madam Speaker, you're ready to raise your hand. No? Okay.
Section 7 went up, that's great. Cancer registry stayed the same. That's just the registry. The prompt payment clause is the same.
Okay.
No problem, thank you.
All right, okay. Moving along, that's page 38, section 7, 8, and 9 is now closed. We are now on page 39, section 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I'm going to ask, I'm looking for hands. If I don't see any hands, I'm going to close this page and all the section on this page. Understood? Okay, so page 39 is now closed. Yes, ma'am. I'm looking. Okay, I'm calling. Okay, folks, listen up, okay? Section 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Page 39. Senator Tello.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Section 14 on medical cannabis program, the $369.95, has there been any lapses in that fund? What is the expenditure to date for FY24 for that $369.952? Mr. Chair, what I'm worried about is that here's a program that has not really been fully implemented, right? So every year we're packing on 369 the following year, et cetera, when, you know, it's just building in a pot, and this money can go somewhere else, like, you know, Cancer Care Foundation or the MIP or, you know, other places in public health. So I don't know, maybe this is a... This is something that we need to look at.
Well, okay, because that is an increase from the previous year.
Plus, on top of that.
It's 17,000 more.
Yeah. So in the event, Mr. Chair, that this doesn't need to be funded, that they still have reserves from the prior year, that this money can be used in public health for other programs, can that be done?
Why don't we try with a bookmark on that specific page?
Please,
and then as we go through the next page and the amendments, and as soon as the folks show up, we can ask that question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we can
okay.
end it before
we'll bookmark that.
we end that. Because we only got one more page, and then we'd have to resolve the bookmark, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so we're going to bookmark page 39, specifically on section 14. Yes, Madam Speaker. Yes, it's on page 39, it's the top of the page. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So on section 10, Mr. Chair, if you could just explain, this is a gigantic increase. It went from $665,000 from the general fund for the health insurance for foster children to $2.3 million. In 1 year, $665,000 to $2.35 million.
So very specifically, Madam Speaker, it was from 600,000 to now 2.3, right?
Yes.
Ma'am, because we already bookmarked that page, we'll hold on to that so we can come back to section 10 and section 14. The whole page will be bookmarked. All right? Is there any other area in that page you wanted to
Sure, just...
Well, we're already bookmarking the whole
so
page
vital
anyway.
statistics went down just a little bit, and just curious why. They've been asking, I think, for more. CPS looks like it's still exactly the same as last year. I would think that's the one that's going to go up.
Okay, for the insurance part, we got the response from Public Health. It was based on the expenditures. That's why it went up. They asked for that increase to cover the insurance, the payments, the expenditures.
Is that because of our self-pay? But our expenditures, for the same number of people, should be the same, right? Regardless of self-pay. Increase because of the number of kids?
Yeah,
So
I think it's the foster kids increase.
right.
There's an increase there.
All right, that's what I wanted to confirm.
Right, it was an increase in
All right, so it went from 665,000 to 2.3 million because of the number of foster children now in
and
the
the
system,
expenditures. That's
600
correct.
some. Okay, and then,
So that resolved then number 10,
yes.
right? Okay. Now going down, any other area you wanted, other than the bookmark of number 14?
just CPS. CPS is exactly the same as last year, it looks like, and that, I'm curious because whenever we talk to CPS, they are still trying to hire. Does this include the vacant positions for social workers that they've been trying to get on board?
Ma'am, based on this, there's actually an increase from,
Is it?
from 2, it went from 1. It's almost $1 million increase is what they
On
got.
CPS?
Yes, based on the spreadsheet we're looking at. 1.2 to 2, so there's an increase there. So what they asked for, they're actually going to get it now, to hire more people.
I hope so. Okay, thanks.
All right? Okay. Now we're mindful, my colleagues, section 10, 11, and 12, and 13 is now closed, okay? It's closed now, okay? We're only now bookmarking section 14. But we will move to now page 40, section 15, 16, 17. And before we ask for any information or anyone would like to speak on it, I'm going to go to Senator Cananta, who has an amendment. But we will still entertain the whole page, okay, folks? So don't, Senator Cananta, you have an amendment for continuing appropriation authorization for MIP, Medicaid, and operation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, the amendment I propose is found on page 40, line 19, and it is to add a section 18 to read as follows. Section 18, DPHSS, continuing appropriation authorization for MIP, Medicaid, and operations. The unexpended balance of appropriations from the general fund and special fund to DPHSS for operations of MIP, Medicaid in the fiscal year of 2024, and shall not revert back to the general fund and shall be available to DPHSS in the fiscal year of 2025. My colleagues, Public Health requested $70 million for the general fund. However, the substitute budget reflects $58 million being appropriated. Based on the June CRER, Public Health has approximately $25 million of unspent revenues available for 3 months remaining in the fiscal year. I hope that any unspent funds can be maintained by the Public Health to support Medicaid, MIP, and any other department needs. Thank you, my colleagues. Good morning as well, and welcome back to my favorite colleague, Senator Amanda Shelton. And also, happy birthday to my other favorite friend, Santa Claus Dwayne Nicholas.
All right, thank you. Anyone would like to speak to the carrying over, basically, of all the funds of public health? Senator Tyree?
That was my question, Mr. Chair. I mean, usually it's just a blanket, an amendment for the whole department. So by clearly just indicating MIP, Medicare operations, that clearly just says all of public health, correct? Is there any reason why we are
Pretty much.
segregating out MIP and Medicaid and then operations, or can't we, can it just say?
It covers it. No, it still covers everything, pretty much, because it
So
talks about...
is there any reason why we're just, clearing it with MIP and Medicaid?
I'm going to ask the author to be specific, but
Right,
my understanding is to DPA, Department of Public Health, for Operation MIP Medicaid, he caught everything, but he wanted to make sure that MIP and Medicaid, if there was anything, they're not short. But I'll have the author speak to that. Senator Canante, if you could respond to that.
Mr. Chair, you're correct. Is that satisfied the good senator of Tamuning?
Correct what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear what the chair said again. What the reason why Medicaid and MIP was segregated out and just instead of make it blanket operations? Is there a reason why it was just spelled out?
We followed the verbiage from last time, in the last budget.
This was the verbiage last year.
I'm going to assume that, but we also got a response from Public Health. The way they have it, the amendment, they're satisfied.
Okay. Well, I just want to know if there was any reason for that. I mean, if we have to segregate it out or just put operations of public health and social services in general is really.
I think it's like the chair said earlier, Madam, it was just to cover every program, most especially those programs. And all those programs service everyone. So it's just to make sure that all those programs can be covered.
Okay, are we good?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anyone else like to speak on this amendment? Yes, Madam Speaker.
This is Mossy. I support this amendment. I'd like to amend it where it says in fiscal year 2024 to, and prior fiscal years, because my recollection is, yeah, there are other fiscal years where public health gets caught up with these federal fund matching and trying to make them all reconcile, and if we could just allow them that. So in fiscal year 2024 and prior fiscal years.
Yes, does anyone have any objection? We just.
No
have that?
objection.
No objection, and then we'll just have that added on by the,
Thank you,
by the clerk.
Thank you, Speaker.
Now, does anyone need to discuss that amendment, to the amendment? None, okay. So I'm gonna gavel that's yes. Yes, Senator Blas.
What is prior fiscal years? Yeah.
I don't know off the bat right now, but I can find out, but it's just to cover if there's any, whatever public health has in prior years, they'll get to keep.
Okay, well, you know, it'd be very good to be able to have, recognizing that maybe in some of these cases they were short. So if, you know, we're gonna give the authority and the program was short, there's no money there. I just wanted to find out what we're looking at, and as far as what was prior year.
We're asking that right now, communicating public health. As soon as we get that, but it's kind of like a safety net, just capture in the event there is something. But we're asking that question.
Please, thank
All
you.
right?
Mr. Chair, yes.
Yes, Madam Speaker.
I haven't heard it this year, but in previous years, when they try to reconcile their federal funds, their matching funds, sometimes it takes longer than that fiscal year to reconcile it. So they're trying to reconcile those from prior years, so it would be before 2024. Still working on those. So that's really all. Yeah, and it's really because of those federal grants that they have.
And yes, the comment I got from public health, they are still reconciling that. So it's a catch-all. In the event the reconciliation finds that they got money, but they need the money used, this is a precautionary step, and which is actually, I have no problem with it. Does anybody else? No. Okay. Do you need to close our speaker on this one, or I
No,
can go ahead?
not on the amendment.
Okay. Are there any objection to this amendment to the amendment? No objection. That amendment passes. Now to the amendment as amended. Yes.
So an additional comment on this amendment is I support the amendment, of course, especially as amended to Jesus Masi, but I just want to point out again, so Public Health requested, as the author of this amendment said, 70 million in general funds. This is in addition to the huge increase in federal funds that they're receiving. They also want general funds for their operations. These federal funds are all dedicated to specific purposes. Not all are going to help them with their operations at all. I don't think they're all going to help them in those, their nursing programs and their community health programs. But so they requested 70 million. This budget bill is only giving them 58 million. It's almost a $10 million again gap. And so this amendment will help, but I think it's still not addressing the gap. And I just wanted to put that on the record, Mr. Chair.
All right. And Public Health did respond that in 24, they're anticipating probably 2.9 laps. So it's going to come up. All right?
2.9, not 10 million?
No, the shortfall. The exit, remember the lapses you were
Oh,
concerned?
the excess, yes. Okay, so
24. They're still
2.9 out
working
of the
on
10,
23.
yeah. So
Correct.
we're still just not addressing all of public health's needs, and I'm concerned
Understood.
when we do that for GMH, public health, behavioral health, just must.
All right. Anyone else like to comment? Or, yes, Senator Barnett?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning to the people of Guam. Thank you for watching. Res in support of the amendment, and any way we can support public health with the many mandates that they have to execute in our community, and many times these mandates and directives benefit our most vulnerable and those of our people who struggle the most. So yeah, rise in support of it, and also just wanted to thank the Department of Public Health and Social Services As my colleagues know, they've been working very hard to get these schools inspected. They've actually inspected 10 schools in the last 3 weeks, so I know that they're working hard and rise in support of the amendment. And undunkalu na sido smasi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Senator Tyree, we're on the amendment as amended. Yeah. Okay, and then we haven't gone back yet to your page, your bookmark of page 39, okay?
Yeah,
And we're still
we
waiting
haven't
for
gone
answers.
to section 16 yet either, have we?
No, we're
Okay,
on it
okay.
right now. We'll do the amendment, then we'll allow you to speak on it, okay?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Are there any objection? There appears to be no objection to the amendment as amended. There being none, you don't need to close, right, Senator Granta? Okay, it's approved. Okay, now, we're back to still page 40. Senator Tyree, I think you want to speak about section 16, right?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Section 16 is Bureau of Social Service Administration, and it was appropriated to the general fund of $7.5 million. This was not in the FY24 budget as I was reviewing the comparisons. So, I haven't seen this in last year's.
You didn't see it last year? I mean, can you repeat what you were asking?
Okay, right, sorry, no worries.
I'm trying to track you and look at the spreadsheet
No worries,
also.
no worries, and plus you were interrupted, so no problem. Section 16 says Bureau of Social Service Administration. In the FY24 budget, I was looking for this section in the FY24 budget and couldn't find it at all. It's $7.5,58215. It's been appropriated from the general fund to the Department of Public Health and Social Services. And this is the operation of Bureau of Social Service Administration.
This
Also,
was requested by the governor in our Budget Act. That's why it's in there.
and how was this funded last year? Because as I mentioned, this was not in the FY24 budget. This Bureau of Social Service Administration, where is the program authorized for Division of Child Wellness, or I'm not quite sure where this came from. I mean, you're saying it came from the governor, but
From Public Health.
from Public Health.
Public Health to the governor to request to put it in the governor's budget. So that was injected there.
Is this like a brand new department? Because like I said, it wasn't in FY24. Bureau of Social Service Administration, $7.5 million. First question, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Maybe I could be mistaken, and I just want to be
No problem.
corrected. Was this in the FY24 budget? Was this in this year's budget? Bureau of Social Service Administration. And if
No,
maybe
no, it
the
was-
oversight
but-
chair of Public Health can
Yeah,
answer, you know?
she was going to comment to
Okay.
that. Yes.
Mr. Chair, so I know in last year's budget, we had what's called the Division of Children's Wellness, which is the new division, and in that division is BOSA. And so BOSA is where CPS is also at. But, so the Division of Children's Wellness is not in this budget. It used to be 15.787 million, though.
Right.
And now this one's only 7.5, so I have the same question.
Yeah, and that's the next thing I had
So-
on here. In FY25, the section under wellness was $15,787,873. So, you know, why such a huge deduction, especially when we're dealing with, if this is so-called the Children Wellness Division, why are we, you know, not funding it as we did last year? I mean, that's a huge difference. From 15 million to 7 under this department that's newly named as Bureau of Social Service Administration? That's quite substantial,
Well, I
Mr.
think
Chair.
from the explanation of the speaker, it used to be the child, now it's now BOSA.
Right, yeah,
Because BOSA was in there, so I'm going to only safe to assume what they did was flip the name.
Right.
Instead of being part of it, BOSA now will be in charge of all of that.
So because they flipped the name, is that they also took out a huge chunk, almost $7 million less than what was appropriated in FY24. So why is it $7 million left for this division for children's welfare?
based on the response from public health, that's what they requested.
So how are they going to,
I'm not even gonna question how they're gonna run their operation, but that's what they requested. We're communicating with public health,
okay.
and it's,
Well, I'd like a better explanation than that when you're starting to take away $7 million from the children, you know, BOSA, and,
I think it's more of public health.
right.
Why-
I'd
why
like to
they're
know
doing that,
from public
yeah.
health and their answer.
Mr. Chair, so,
Okay,
so under Division of Children's Wellness, there are other things besides BOSA. So there's BOSA, there's the Bureau of Child Care Development, there's the Preschool Development Grant Office. Those are all under the Division of Children's Wellness. So that division received 15 million last year. This, now BOSA by itself is going to receive 7.5. I can't tell if that's an increase or decrease for BOSA itself. BOSA is the one I'm concerned about because the child care, those are all by grants. But this BOSA is the one, it also, it's mostly grants, but this is where CPS falls, our shortage of foster homes, our shortage of
the response.
shelters.
Okay, the response we're getting from public health is that number one, sections 10, 13, and 15 is a combination of what would normally go under that section. So the 7 million to the BOSA would be in line, and that's where you see all the spread of the money. What they did was they went specifically to a line item. But it still equates to, and they're responding positively, like they're okay with it.
Yeah, and then you need to ask them, then, they had these, section 10, as you mentioned, and I believe you mentioned one other area,
That was 10, 13, and
13.
15.
And 15? Well,
Right.
they were in the FY24 budget, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
That was in the FY24 budget.
Correct.
What they've done now is, did they increase these areas? Maybe they increased those areas, 10, 15, and that, because
Yes.
nothing in this Bureau of Social Service Administration is very broad.
Yes, those other two sections are up. There's an increase for 25.
Can we get a definition on the duties and responsibilities of Bureau of Social Service Administration? I mean, can we get an explanation of what this department is within the Department of Public Health and Social Services? That can kind of give us a gauge on what this 7 million is going to be spent for, truly spent for.
We can ask
Can
that.
we bookmark this, Mr. Chair, and get a
Well,
response from them?
Remember, the bookmark has to be
Yeah.
resolved when we're done with that part. So that's why we're asking now for that information, so we can get it to you.
Okay, and then
so
we go to
can close-
behavioral wellness,
So
yeah.
we can close
Okay.
this
Chapter. Yeah.
this part
Okay.
and chapter, and then move on to the next one. Because remember, at the end, we bookmark, at the end of the chapter or part, we
go
close it. Okay?
Can we take a short recess just so we can hear from Public Health clearly?
Okay.
Because this is a brand new, you know.
It's still there. It was there. It just was integrated with something, but they did increase the other areas.
Yeah, we were
Okay.
incorporating it in a budget bill, and I can only imagine that next year, the same definition of Bureau of Social Service Administration is probably going to be in there next time.
Right.
So I think we all need an understanding of what it really
Okay.
takes
Well,
care of.
Well, let's
Okay.
take a couple minutes
Thank you.
while we are waiting for
out.
their response.
Okay.
We're on recess at this time.
Thanks.
Folks, we are on page 40. All right? Thank you. the committee of the whole is back, call back to order. In reference to the question, I think Senator Tyree is satisfied with the answers that we were able to present to her earlier. It's an administrative arm, all public health. Yes, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that recess. Just to clarify, this newly titled department within public health, or program that they're calling it. It is BOSA, as mentioned. However, I did one of the questions I asked, are they getting lower or the same amount that they had last year in FY24? And according to your staff, they are getting the requested amount they asked for, and it is said it's not lower for BOSA, which is you know, a relief, a relief to our community, actually, to our children, the most vulnerable in situations where they land in the hands of government, you know, to take care of them. So thank you for that short recess and understanding what now will probably be the new norm going into the next budget. So Bureau of Social Service Administration basically is segregating or separating the BOSA program into one. So thank you again.
All right, thank you. That being said, the bookmark is taken care of. Correct? We're done with part 2 of chapter 3, Department of Public Health, correct? We have no disagreement here, okay? Gavel down, we are closing that. We are now on page 41. We do have our let me back up one second. Madam Speaker, you had an amendment that's similar to what we already passed about the revenue of public health. Shall not lapse. We did an amendment. We're going to go ahead and just not entertain that one, okay? We don't need that one, okay? Now we're going to go into, we are now on page 41, chapter 3, part 3, section 1, 2, 3, but there is an amendment. I think that's being passed out right now, right? Oh, we need to take a short recess because we need to process that because there is an amendment. It's just being sent around. Colleagues, we're on a recess at this time. Committee Hall is called back to order. Colleagues, we are on Chapter 3, Part 3, page 41. Does anybody need to speak on Section 1, 2, and 3 on page 41? If not, we're going to move to the next page for the amendment. Okay. Madam Speaker, amendments on page 42. Yes, ma'am.
On page 41, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
Mr. Masi. So, it looks like for overall, behavioral health received an increase in 1.2 million over the FY24 total. So that's good, probably for organic growth salaries and things. But according to behavioral health, they were trying to expand their detox program. They said this at their hearing that there's a wait list of over 20 for the women's residential substance use treatment. And they would be able to increase the current bed capacity at the Center of Hope by an additional 6 to 8 beds. The RFP out for contract can cover up to 15 beds. This is in detox and rehab. And so I want to point that out in Section 2. That's, I think, what they need to increase services. I made an amendment for Section 4. I got confused. So this one's detox and rehab. Section 4 is inpatient detox program, New Beginnings. But it's not the inpatient that they want the increase on. It's the Section 2 detox. The outpatient, these contracted out services, such as Salvation Army, Oasis Empowerment Center, and now the new Center of Hope. So my amendment to Section 4, if I could instead add that language,
Well, Madam
make an
Speaker,
amendment to add that language, Section 2.
just to give you a little bit of info,
Okay.
as we spoke to the OB and also public health, or
Behavioral health.
behavioral, because one of your amendments asked to unexpended fund from prior fiscal years to include this year, it's approximately $2.8 million. So everything that pretty much in all your amendments can be covered, pretty much, without having to grab from anywhere else. So as I'm looking at all your other amendments, the 2.8 will cover pretty much almost everything. Of your first amendment, of the 2 million, and then the next one, the nurses' pay, would be covered, and then so forth. So I just wanted to give you that info up front so that you know as we're moving on the amendments, pretty much your second amendment of unexpended funds would cover everything. All right, so
All right.
Go ahead and continue, ma'am.
Cesar Swansea, yeah. Well, I of course hope that's correct. That would be easy because finding money at this point without being able to amend the revenue projections like I tried to do on day one is really hard to find money for these health agencies. However, in a letter I received August 15th that they have asked for this additional $250,000 for detox for the women's residential substance use, and that they said that the current budget in this bill that they're looking at did not cover the nurses' pay. So that's the last communication I had from them. That's August 15th. I think, Mr. Chair, that they already are going out on this RFP. That thing is going to be awarded before the end of FY24. So I'm not sure those lapses that you're talking about at this point are going to be the same at the end of September, because they are awarding a contract, hopefully, for that. Right?
They're reporting 2.8 laps. I'm just saying that the amendments you're asking for is covered. It
All
covers
right,
the
well, that's not
250.
what public health is telling me. I mean, behavioral health, I'm sorry. This is behavioral
Behavioral,
health.
that's
Yeah,
correct.
and so that's not what they told me. They told me they need 250 more for detox, and they need 198,000 for nurses' pay. That's not included here. So that's the reason for my amendments, Mr. Chair.
Okay, anyone would like to speak on the speaker's amendment found on page 42?
Yes, I'd like to take that language, Mr. Chair, that I'm adding to section 4 and add it instead to section 2 of the bill. If we could just make that technical correction.
Correct, that's
Yeah.
correct. It's actually that 42 should have been 41,
Yes.
correct?
No, that section 4 should be section 2. I should have amended section 2 instead of section 4, yeah.
That's correct. Are there any objection to that correction?
Mr. Chair,
It should
can
have
you
been
just
2 instead of
clarify
4.
the amendment portion?
So
Okay,
Please.
the amendment that she's addressing is, it says section 4 when it should have been section 2. It's the wrong section, and we're still on page 41, section 2 anyway. So just to correct that, unless there's a real objection, I see that we should just continue on with this.
Can they read the amendment, Mr. Chair, so that we're on the correct one?
Okay, the amendment she's referring to is the inpatient detox program, New
Okay,
Beginnings,
okay.
which you'll find on
Okay, got it.
page 41,
Thank you.
section 2. That's all she needed to change. Instead of lines 3 and 8, it'll be further down the line, and then the section would have to reflect section 2 instead of section 4, and that would correct that. Are there any objections, Senators? You have a comment for that change?
No objections, but if we can get a recess to see the amendment?
You have the amendment in your hand? It's already been passed out? But I have a copy. Just line out the word, page 42 to 41, line out the word that says section 4 to 2, section 4 to 2. That's all you're doing. That's all the change we're making on that one. Unless anyone have any objection to that. Senator Tyree?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I think we're just a little bit confused because there's so many changes being made right now. And I just wanted to verify, I mean, we have something in front of us that says section 4, which we are scratching that out to say section 2. And then it starts inpatient detoxification program, New Beginnings. Okay, that is down in section 4. The whole explanation is in section 4. So why are we changing it to section 2 when inpatient detoxification program starts at section 4?
Is that the request of the speaker, the author of the amendment?
Okay, so
Okay, so maybe the speaker can speak to that.
All right, Mr. Chair, yeah. So this is at behavioral health request, and I made a boo-boo. I put section 4, but it's really, they want an amendment to section 2, detox and rehab services, not the inpatient New Beginnings. So all we want to do is add the language, add to section 2 of the bill, the underlined words here that say, and 250,000 is appropriated from the 2% general fund reserve, blah, 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 as amended, rainy day fund to GBHWC, and and stop there. The rest is all in section 2 already.
All right, thank you. Senator Tyree, back to your question, and then I'll get to you, Vice Speaker.
It's just a point of
Mr.
information.
Chair, I think what we should do, Mr. Chair, is just get a new
A point
amendment.
of information?
Oh.
What was that, ma'am?
And
Mr. Chair, on a point of information to clarify, the amendment before us, because you have, notwithstanding any other provisions of law, it says the amount of $2,100,052, and on page 41 it says 2,657,226. Am I talking about
Okay,
the right
well,
section?
you
So
know,
that's
Could
why.
clarify, Mr. Chair?
Yes, what we'll do is take a
Take a
recess,
recess,
so
please.
that she can fix the amendment, and then
Thank
we'll come
you.
back to that. Okay, Madam Speaker?
Thank you.
Take a recess, thank you. Committee of the Whole is called back to order. Madam Speaker, I'm going to ask you if you can withdraw your amendment so that we can entertain the new amendment, the change amendment, okay? Madam Speaker, if you can withdraw your amendment?
Sure.
Since you have a new
Yeah,
amendment?
I withdraw my amendment to section 4.
Okay, if there are no objection to that, the amendment is withdrawn. Now, we're on your new amendment, but that's on page 40, it's still 41.
41.
Correct. Section 2, okay?
Yeah.
Ma'am?
Cesar Masi, Mr. Chair. So this amendment is to add to the current appropriation for detox and rehab $250,000. And according to behavioral health, and I also just got off the phone with them, they are not lapsing any money. They are underfunded 1.3 million this year because the Guma Mommy contract was not funded. So they are using all their other funds to cover Guma Mommy, but are only able to certify that on a month-to-month basis. So it might look like lapses, but it's clearly not lapses. They're going to expend all of those funds. This $250,000 extra for detox and rehab is to expand the Guma Famalawan, which is the women's residential substance use treatment, where there's a wait list of 20 people currently. And this is for single, pregnant, and postpartum women in the Center of Hope as well. They've advertised the contract out for services for these women. They expect to award this RFP with their current funds, and the $250 would allow them to continue that in FY25 and to expand it. The contract says they can go up to 15 beds. So this would allow for that expansion, which is severely needed. Citus Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Does any colleague would like to speak to this amendment? Senator Barnett.
Citus Masi, Mr. Chair, and good morning again. Rise in support of this amendment, and kind of struggling to understand why behavioral health is underfunded to this degree, especially given that we're facing, two epidemics relative to drugs. We've got, of course, the crystal methamphetamine epidemic, which has claimed 40 lives through overdose, and then the fentanyl crisis, which has also taken lives and is really one of the issues that the governor and lieutenant governor have kind of highlighted recently. But this amendment, what this amendment would do is fund the women's treatment. And, given the highly addictive nature of crystal methamphetamine, anytime you get anybody who wants to go in and get clean, I think it's a victory for our island and her people. And just the fact that we have 20 women waiting, right? And these are women who, as the speaker had said, are single mothers, pregnant, postpartum. And we talk about the sanctity of motherhood when these women have reached that point where they say "Nat para," enough is enough, and they want to get clean, but there's no room in the shelter. So support any effort to increase and make available detox and rehabilitation services, which are already, I want to commend rehabilitation and the detox community, as they work very hard, and they really are on the front lines of these crises that our island's experiencing. And when you talk to them, a lot of times the services are available, but the willingness of people to want to get clean is just not there. And what we have, what I've seen, what I've heard is that you get some people who, they catch a case, commit a crime, go to court, and then it's, oh no, I'll go to rehab, and then they, show up the first week, and then, taigui AWOL, right? So there are many cases like that. So that's why I think it's important that we celebrate and really give as much opportunity as we can to the people who want to get clean and the people who want to make a difference, especially if we're talking about our women in a matriarchal society such as Guam. Any effort we can do to address the need, right? Because when you talk to people in rehab, what they always say is they wish more people would want to get clean. And so here we have a situation where we can actually put money towards addressing the need and the demand, which is there, and which is something, given everything that our island is facing relative to crystal meth and fentanyl. Again, I just have to say, people who stand up and make that decision that they want to get help, that they want to get treatment, especially we're talking about, mothers here who are doing everything they can to go to treatment so that, in many cases, they can eventually be reunited with their kids. And we've heard, across the hall in the public hearing room from Public Health and CPS just about what is the number one thing impacting the destruction and degradation of our families here on this island, and it's the drugs. We've heard testimony from public health officials who say that, people would rather go out here and score meth and smoke meth and then take care of their kids. So again, anytime you have people who are willing to shake that addiction and do what it takes to get clean and to enter the rehab atmosphere, I think has to be supported. So again, I commend the speaker for seeing this need and addressing it through this amendment, and ask that my colleagues do the same and support it. Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Senator Tyree?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I echo the sentiments from the previous speaker regarding the need for this section to be, funded. I'm not going to reiterate everything that he says, but I truly believe that we need to do our part to assist those who seek help, especially asking for it, that they can't do it on their own. However, Mr. Chair, this amendment is taking funding from the rainy day fund. And I have a problem with that, Mr. Chair, as well as some of my other colleagues do. Rainy day fund is to be put in place for something. I mean, it's not saying that the issue here is not as important, Mr. Chair, not at all. But there are guidelines in using the rainy day fund. We have excess revenue of $27 million in the CRER report for the month of July. It's anticipated that there may be an additional $5 million by the end of the fiscal year. I've wanted to be very conservative when it comes to funding. And I truly believe that we should at least keep $30 million at the end of the fiscal year, because it's unaudited. And we've seen in the past that, I think it was in 2021, Mr. Chair, or 22, I'm sure OFB can remember the scenario where we ended up with $60 million in excess revenue at the end of the fiscal year. By the time the audit was completed, there was only $30 million left. We don't want to be in that predicament, because we don't even know what the new norm is anymore. It's coming up. This is something that we're going to have to be conservative and wait and see. What will the new norm be now that it stopped raining federal funds? But for $250,000, I'm sure we can find funding in the excess revenue for something as important as this. So, I stand in support of the amendment, but I do not stand in support of where the money is coming from. Are we going to open the floodgates to this body and everybody start attacking the rainy day fund? Absolutely not. So unless we can make an amendment to include this in excess revenue for FY24, I can't support the amendment. So I would like to make an amendment to the amendment, Mr. Chair, and that is to strike out is appropriated from the, strike out from, keep from, strike out the 2% general fund reserve in Section 1F of Chapter 1, Public Law 27-42, as amended, the rainy day fund, and to incorporate is appropriated from the unappropriated and unencumbered excess fiscal year FY2024 general fund revenue. So I'd like to make that amendment, Mr. Chair, for this section.
Just understand that anything to do with the excess 2024 will not be entertained until miscellaneous appropriations, okay? And that was already stated earlier, and it will continue that same way. So if you want to make the amendment, feel free. I'm just going to rule it out of order, the use of surplus money.
Then I'm going to attempt to do this, Mr. Chair, and hope my colleagues realize that, there are a lot of amendments. Yeah, there's a lot of amendments that are in later on using excess revenue exceeding the 27 million. But this is important, Mr. Chair. This is very important. I think my colleagues need to consider, and this is to help individuals who are seeking help because of their addiction. Where else are they going to go? But are we going to continue to see them, struggling and stealing and hurting other people to fulfill their need for drugs or alcohol or any kind of substance abuse? This is an opportunity, Mr. Chair, for us to do something good in our community. We know there's an epidemic on this island. We all know that. How many times have we had to say that over and over? We say it, but we don't put our money where our mouth is. So we have an opportunity to do that. So I'd like to make that amendment, Mr. Chair. You can rule me out of order, but I'll, ask for at least the opportunity, Mr. Chair, to make that amendment.
And your amendment is?
To utilize, to strike out the area where it says 2% general fund reserve, strike it out, and is appropriated from the unappropriated, unencumbered excess excess fiscal year 2024 general fund revenue, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tadegui. With that, I'm going to rule it out of order. And if you want, you can pose the question to overrule the chair. Senator Tadegui?
As your vice chair, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to respect your decision at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Going back to the original amendment, anybody else would like to speak? Senator Brown, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I concur with the intended use of these funds. We were discussing this just a few days ago, and maybe these are the kind of things that the taxes on cannabis should be invested in. But I also have reservation with regards to use of funds from the rainy day fund. Once we start this, it won't end, because this legislature has such a tendency to appropriate, especially for our projects that we want funded that otherwise would not be looked at as a priority. And I think we need to be fiscally responsible. We're bragging about all the additional revenue we are getting, the excess funds we're getting. Every month or two, some of us can't trip over ourselves fast enough to write our bill to appropriate money, because that's just what we do. All that heavy lifting, mas makat, istinapapit, oh my goodness. But this is where the challenge is making sure that as we go through this budget process that we are really spending money on the priorities. And if we look at the drug problem on Guam, you see it out there. Not even if it's someone who you know or within your family or within your friends and that network that you have, but even just out in the community. And you can see these individuals who obviously are under some type of influence, some serious type of influence, especially some of these young people that have a whole future ahead of them. And to watch them deteriorate because of the use and abuse of drugs. I don't think anyone here can argue that this is not a priority. But how we address the people's money, how we use it, because some of us have no problem to want to take credit for spending millions of dollars of the people's money. Ain't we just important? But when you really get down to the brass tacks, are we spending it on what is most critical? Not what politically we think is going to get us reelected or elected, but what is really needed, where the community really is hurting. And we know, all of us, one way or the other, are affected by this, by the decisions in some members of our families, friends, choose to abuse drugs for whatever the reason is. I mean, it's one thing you choose to destroy your own life, but the ramifications are the impact to everyone around you. And to the bigger issue, not just your friends and your family, but the community that's affected by it. Especially when it relates to crime that harms our people. And I do bring this up, our elderly that literally are imprisoned in their homes because they fear going out. They fear being alone at night. You worry about what you leave in your garage because you don't know if it's going to be there. You don't know if your car's safe, your house is safe. So I don't argue at all the proposal here by the speaker to want to fund this, because this is one of those things I think up there. You know, when we talk about health care, we talk about public safety, we talk about education. This growing drug problem, drug abuse problem that we have on this island, I think is right up there. And I would love to fund it. But even I have to say, when we start dipping into the rainy day fund, that does not show me fiscal responsibility, because there might be greater challenges ahead for us. Last year, if we had suffered another typhoon, where would we have been? All this bragging of excess money, oh my goodness, we can't wait to appropriate from the unappropriated funds of fiscal whatever. That's all new language, that's foreign language. That's all, historically, the Guam Legislature never had that language to use and abuse. But you got Department of Administration, BBMR, they come in here, they brag how much, oh yeah, we're just rolling in dough. And yet here we are in the budget, we haven't even gotten halfway through. And we're already looking at other sources, including dipping into the rainy day fund, to fund what all of us will say is a critical need. So I really got to wonder, how well are we doing? I wonder if all that ARP money and that Typhoon Marwar money is starting to dry up, and the realities of all the other burdens that we placed on the people of Guam, all the other long-term burdens and appropriations we placed on them because of short-term revenue now already is starting to be felt. Because we just got really happy in spending money left and right before the last election 2 years ago. Buying favors. And yet the long-term impact on our people is going to be they're going to suffer more. They're going to suffer more with the new rate increases to their water that Guam Water Works Authorities just completed, check mark, public hearing. But we all know the reality of that. Even if we all came and testified against the rate increase, we know what's going to happen. Those rates are going to go up. And now we still think we can still, you know, do the power credit because, hey, that's a nice ride to get on. Let's do that power credit. Let's take that $15, $20, $30 million. Let's slam dunk that because that's going to get us reelected. Hey, I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. I didn't even have a power bill last month. But we can't come up with a couple $100,000 to assist on the rehabilitation needs out there for those in our community that are suffering from drug abuse. You got to wonder where the priorities are in terms of how we are budgeting. When we have some department and agencies that are getting millions more, I hope we can sustain it next year. And yet critical needs that we know should be right up there at the top of our list, we're having to dip into the rainy day fund to fund it. And that just doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of how we're prioritizing this budget. So while I definitely support the intent of this amendment, I cannot support the funding source. If an alternate funding source is there that's viable, I would be more than happy to support it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Anyone else like to speak to the amendment? Big Brand, Senator Lujan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with the previous speaker as well. The intent of the amendment for the program need is vital. But, you know, I want to point out some things that I point out in the very beginning. We started this budget session. The current budget that we're working with, FY24, 23-24, the Healthy Futures Fund came in at 17.5 million. The current budget that we're working with now, the Healthy Futures Fund, is coming in at 12.5 million. There's a big decrease. There's a 4.9 million decrease on the Healthy Futures Fund, which I guess is good news, but not when you compare it to a current budget that we're working with $17.5 million, and the need now is $17.7 million. So the program growth is about 1.2 million in funding. And earlier in the start of this budget session, we asked that, you know, we pointed out that the Healthy Futures Fund has declined, and Steve had pointed out that the decline is due to the fact that people are not smoking as much. And so I guess that's good news, but it's not really good news in the sense because the program need, again, grew by $1.2 million. My question is here, again, is I think the reason why we're tapping into the Healthy Futures, to the Rainy Day Fund, is because we see a big decline in the Healthy Futures Fund. And so if that is the trend, Mr. Chairman, next year we're going to have a Healthy Futures Fund in the same section, probably at the $7.9 million. And with the growth of the program, another $1.2 million would be $2.4 million that is needed. So my question is, are there alternative sources that we're turning to? Because at some point, maybe the Healthy Futures Fund is going to be depleted, but the program need will continue to escalate. And so the funding sources are declining, but the programs are not. The program needs are still at an incline. And so I'm just putting out an alarm out there that, again, it'd be great if the funding source decreases and the program needs decrease as well, but it's not. The funding source is decreasing, program needs are increasing. Are we looking at alternative sources of funding? Because this trend of a decline in the Healthy Futures Fund is, and the programs that it helps fund is declining rapidly, a big decline from the current budget that we're working with, or that we're dealing with. That's my question, and so that again brings me back to the amendment in the sense that I support the intent, but the funding source I'm real sketchy about, and I know why that is, because there's a big decline in the Healthy Futures Fund. That being said, Mr. Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the amendment? Senator Paris? Oh, Senator Paris.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of this amendment. I think, when we talk about needs versus wants, this is a need in our community. We have a meth epidemic, and now soon we're hearing about fentanyl on the rise. I think 250,000 is something that is, reasonable to ask for. In fact, it's probably too little to ask for. We're talking about 1/4 of a 1/10,000th of a percent of what we're receiving in our budget. And we're talking about the great need in our community. And I think it is the rainy day. The rainy day has come for our community in regards to drug addiction and rehabilitation. And so we want to do, and plus not only that, this will have a multiplier effect. If we're talking about addressing the women's rehabilitation unit, You know, this affects children too, their families. And, you know, I think this is a critical need that needs to be addressed. And I think, yeah, it's essential that we direct whatever resources we have. Again, there was 20, we were told there were 20 on the waiting list. This will only fund 15. So we're not even meeting the needs of our community. I mean, we're going to turn away from this? I don't think so. I think we need to respond. This is a crying need that needs to be addressed. And I ask my colleagues to rethink about, you know, the rainy day fund. Yes, there are concerns about the big picture of the fiscal health of our community, health, but it was even testified that we're going to collect over what OFB has projected. And we're talking just what, 1/4 of 10,000th of a percent. It's not even a drop in the bucket. So I ask my colleagues to rethink about addressing the needs, the true needs of our community, and supporting this amendment to Duismasi.
Thank you. Senator Blas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, Mr. Chair, I support and I agree with the concerns and the issues that were raised by the gentleladies from Tumuning and from Algo Bay, as well as my gentleman from Tumuning. I don't think there's anybody in here that is going to say that this is not an important issue that we need to address. I guess my concern here, that I share the sentiments of my three other colleagues, is whether or not where we're going to get this money is probably the best way or the only way to be able to do this. Later on in this budget bill, we're going to be talking about other programs in excess of $250,000 that could have been funded elsewhere. Such as this. This could be funded elsewhere without jeopardizing the integrity and the reason for the rainy day fund. I don't disagree that this is money that's going to be well spent. Where my issue is where this money is going to come from. And I recognize that earlier you had ruled the possibility of where it was to be, where it was proposed to come from as an amendment, with the caveat that it could be addressed in a separate section, separate chapter. So I guess to answer the question, Mr. Chair, is if in fact this amendment does not garner the votes necessary to pass in this section with this funding source, is the chair going to recognize if this same amendment was placed in a different section, a miscellaneous section under a different funding source? Will it be able to be addressed there?
In the miscellaneous, yes.
Okay.
Just like any.
I just wanted to make sure of that, so that way we understand that this is not the end all to this. That there's a possibility. Again, there are other funding sources that we can get this, that does not degrade the integrity of the rainy day fund. I know that the general rule in the budget is basically offsets. There's another possibility of being able to reduce certain amounts in certain other upcoming sections of the bill, where while we reduce the monies from the general fund there to be able to do this here, there's the possibility of that program being funded, and I'll just say, well, by the American Rescue Plan. It's kind of interesting that as we want to basically look for $250,000, there's $200 million that we have supposedly no say on. It concerns me, and I appreciate, what the author of the amendment seeks to do in being able to fund this. But what really bothers me about this whole thing is that if this administration, if this agency of this administration saw the need to be able to do this after their executive budget had been submitted, where is the administration on how they feel about this need, this necessity for the additional $250,000? I don't see any paperwork. The only paperwork that I got here was to be able to fund other programs from the administration, but it didn't include this. Nor did it include a funding source. So how do they intend to do this if this was not funded? It seems to be not a priority for them. As was stated by almost every individual that has testified, or that is presented on this floor, it is a priority. Yet this and many other amendments I'm sure that are going to be coming is that this administration wants to wash its hands on being able to fund priority areas that should be a priority for the sake of saving their own political programs. How sad. I take, I guess, comfort in knowing that there are two other alternatives. And I'm confident that if this amendment were to pass here, that in a upcoming, or that in a later chapter of this budget bill, we can address it again using a funding source that currently exists. One of which we have control of, and the other one of which we can only hope that the administration sees in them that this is a priority and they will be able to fund. I can imagine, as many times as they put out press releases, how joyous a press release would say, yep, you know what, they're right. We need to be able to put $250,000 more, so therefore we can take it from this fund, which the legislature has no ability to be able to dive into. So, I like to see, because as we're going to see down the road, we're going to be funding a lot of pet projects from this administration that we shouldn't have to fund in expense for a program that's important for the community. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Anyone else like to speak to this amendment? None. Madam Speaker, would you like to close before we go for the vote?
Jesus Masi, and thank you to my colleagues for the debate on this amendment. I guess we're all in agreement of the need, and I just want to point out the realities of the situation. The situation is that the governor actually requested a $3.48 million increase to the Guam Behavioral Health's budget, 3.48. So my understanding from Guam Behavioral Health is that the current budget only gives 1.2 million addition to FY24. That's a $2 million decrease that the legislature will be giving behavioral health versus the governor's request. It's kind of embarrassing to me, I think, and that means behavioral health was not able to fund these programs. The increase in detox, it means behavioral health had to not fund capital improvement and equipment, and they say, okay, then they're going to have to look for other funding for those purposes as well. I don't understand the decreases to, or the not meeting at least the governor's request for these agencies, but the reality is the need is there, and I want those who are very cautious about using rainy day fund to know that I share their concern. But the rainy day fund, according to the fiscal team by the governor, we are going to be setting aside $18 million this year, according to this bill. We set aside $16 million last year. So in that $2 million increase, I hoped that we could spare the $250,000. The balance of the rainy day fund right now is $46 million. And we have received our A ratings. So I don't think that taking the $250,000 out is going to decrease our A ratings. The reality of adding or funding this from another source, I'm open to any source. I wish it's OFB that would find the sources for us. While we're scrambling, there are 18, at least, maybe more, amendments to the miscellaneous chapter to use the $27 million excess 2024 funds. 18 amendments so far. When the fiscal team came in from the governor, they asked for 10 million more expenditures from the, well, they said to increase FY25, but we didn't do that. That amendment that I made to increase 25 revenues failed. So those amendments have been introduced now by my colleagues to fund all the governor's extra $10 million projects in FY24 excess revenues. Those are all ahead of the line from behavioral health. And that's the reality. So the reality is increases for the hospital or behavioral health or DISID from FY2024 revenues cannot be guaranteed in this type of atmosphere, where they're going to have to wait in line behind every other pet project, where they were not prioritized in the bill that we're looking at right now, where we are giving them less, $2 million less than the governor's request. I'm not sure that we ever give these health agencies less than the governor's request, except for this year. But, so that's why I'm asking for, please consider the use of this fund. $250 from this fund. I'm not opening the floodgates. I'm saying, I agree with my colleague who said the rainy day for meth addiction is here. The rainy day for women in need because of meth addiction is here. The rainy day for children who suffer because their parents are addicted to meth is here. And I think we can spare from the $18 million that we are setting aside to sit in the rainy day fund versus the $16 million that we set aside last year, that we can spare that $250 now, guarantee, get it done, not jeopardize any of our bond ratings by this $250,000, bring us closer to what the governor had asked for behavioral health, and not let behavioral health or these women or these children wait in line for the use of this FY2024 excess revenues. We're going to be ruled out of order at the end of all those and be told at that time, sorry, all the excess revenues have already been appropriated to all these things that the fiscal team asked for, all these other things. Obviously, the $91 million excess over FY24 that we are predicting for FY25 has been put to other places. So I just ask for that consideration for those who are hesitant to use a rainy day, that this is an excellent use of a rainy day fund. It's $250,000 out of an $18 million set aside. It will not jeopardize anything, but it will actually very, very much help. And we cannot be guaranteed any other amendments the way the things look. If you look at the amendments that have already been submitted for the use of the excess funds. Caesar's Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On the amendment, is there any objection to the amendment? There's no objection, even though there is an objection. All in favor, please raise your hand. Amendment fails. We'll now move to the next amendment. Madam Speaker, you still have, let me see. Are there any questions for page 41, section 1, 2, and 3? I just want to close that. Okay, page 41 is closed. We're now on page 42. Okay, there is an amendment on page 42, Madam Speaker.
On this page, I just want to point out, none of these have increased, these detox programs, none of them have increased, and according to this budget, over FY24, as if we have not seen an increase. It's just kind of mind-blowing. Yeah, so my amendment, behavioral health is the excess, right?
Yes, your amendment is on the unexpended funds. We're talking your amendment, or are you just speaking on the page?
Which amendment are you?
I see you have one on page 42, unexpended funds from prior fiscal year.
So yeah, I'd like to move that amendment. This is for the unexpended funds, and I'm going to tell you right now, we just got off the phone during the break with behavioral health, and they said they were underfunded last year by $1.2 million, which they needed to fund Gumamami. They were not funded that, so they had to limit the programs that they were running in order to fund Gumamami. So they are unable to certify the whole $1.2 million that they needed for Gumamami through the fiscal year and had to do it month to month. They said they pretty much guarantee us they will have zero in excess funds. That's why they really are asking for this small amount of $250 for the detox program. They need money to cover nurses' pay. This amount that we're giving them is $2 million less than the governor asked to give them. It's not going to cover what they need. So this again, I've learned, it's really not going to help them very much to allow them to use their unexpended funds from prior fiscal years in FY25. But I'd like to pass this just in case there is any money left, that they don't have to rebid those contracts out and they can continue. They're ready to award the contract for some detox services, but at a very limited amount. So the failed amendment would have been able to increase those amounts up to the 15 beds. They're not able to do that now. But I would like to allow them to continue to use the unexpended funds for the current contracts. So that's my amendment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Does anyone would like to speak to the amendment? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make sure this is on page 40?
Page 42.
Right. Okay, so I'm looking
40
at...
is very close, 41 is very close.
Okay,
We're
so
on the
this
last
is
page.
for the...
The unexpended. if there's any.
Can you read the beginning, sir?
The amendment says unexpended funds from prior fiscal years, unexpended funds from prior fiscal years.
Okay, got it. Okay.
If there's anything, they'll get it.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just
All right?
wanted to verify.
Okay, anyone else like to speak to this? If not, are there any objection to this? There being none, Madam Speaker, I don't think you need to close on this one. Thank you. Amendment passes. Now we'll proceed to, still on page 42. Your next amendment, Madam Speaker. Being that it's from the CRE again,
Here.
you do understand that I'm going to rule it out of order?
This is,
Okay.
this is on page 42 to add a section for the nurse pay adjustment. So according to the behavioral health, the current proposed bill does not even cover the nurse pay adjustments, which again is a mere amount of $198,197,000. I'm asking that we fund this out of any excess for FY25, any revenue that comes in FY25 over what we have predicted in FY25. And section 2(1)(a) of chapter 1 refers to taxes. So if we receive $198,000 more in taxes than what we have predicted, behavioral health can get that, and they can cover their nurse pay without making cuts to their existing suicide programs, lifelines, 988, all of their programs, critical needs in our community. So I ask my colleagues to please pass this amendment. This is for the nurses' pay.
Madam Speaker, same ruling I'm going to apply because it deals with the CRER. I'm going to rule it out of order. I'm not in objection of paying the nurses. I'm going to ask for a quick recess because I'm getting text that it should have covered it. Let's take a 1-minute recess. Let me reconfirm this. Thank you. The committee of the whole is called back to order. Information I got from OFB is that for Madam Speaker, we're in the nursing, that the nurses' pay is covered under the staffing pattern. That's what OFB advised me. Whatever they submitted, they covered it, but we'll still go with your amendment. Now, with your amendment, because you're addressing CRE again, for 24, I'm going to rule that, ma'am? Oh, that's for 25, not 24. Oh, okay, if it's for 25, then I won't rule that, that's future money. Okay, then I'm not ruling that out of order. Anyone would like to speak to this amendment? None? Without a closing, is there any objection? Or any objection? There being no objection, amendment passes. Colleagues, it's 11:35. I'm going to go ahead and call recess till 2 o'clock, okay? Hopefully everybody can be here by 2 so we can start at 2. Thank you, we're at recess this time.